Andrew requested me on Patreon to review the 2004 Wayans Brothers comedy White Chicks. This was a film that was absolutely destroyed by critics in its original release, but has grown a decent-sized following. So I was very curious to see which side I would fall on. Unfortunately, I do have to agree with the critics who disliked the film, although I won't deny there were a few bits I found amusing. The biggest problem I had with White Chicks was how ludicrous the entire premise is. I know it's a ridiculous and silly comedy and not meant to be taken seriously. However, there is not a single intelligent character in this entire film. If there was, well, the runtime would be significantly shorter. The two lead characters are Marcus and Kevin, a couple of FBI agents, neither of whom have much in the way of actual personalities. By the way, Marcus is married, and this is where we're once again treated to that storytelling device I'm getting a little annoyed at seeing so often. Marcus's wife Gina is upset at him for working too much and not spending enough time with her. He's an FBI agent. He even tells her precisely why he arrived at the hour he did and how his day went, and she immediately complains they're not communicating. She also spends the entire movie being controlling, even calling his boss during work hours and accusing him of cheating on her, and then that storyline finishes with Marcus apologizing to her. You should not be the one apologizing, Marcus. As I've said a gazillion times before, I don't like this trope of the hard-working character whose child or significant other gets upset at them for working too much, and I'll definitely put White Chicks as one of the worst examples of it. Anyway, let's move on to the central plot of Marcus and Kevin disguising themselves as two white socialites. I found the way the story led them towards pretending to be the titular White Chicks was so contrived, and it only happens because nobody in this movie ever uses their brains. Where the film gets really implausible is when they arrive at the Hamptons in their disguises. Nobody should be fooled by that, especially not the other FBI agents who have the real sisters' photographs on file or their friends who've known them for many years. And yet, everyone just accepts that these are the same two women. Later on, several people even see the real sisters and the fake sisters in the same place and get confused, even though they look nothing alike. The entire movie is based around the idea that people believe the disguised agents are really these two white women, but there's no suspension of disbelief. What's especially surprising is that the makeup effects were done by Greg Canham, who 11 years earlier made Robin Williams believably look like an elderly woman in Mrs. Doubtfire. I don't know whether he did not have enough time to perfect the designs in White Chicks, but I know he could have pulled off something more convincing. Then there's the way Marcus and Kevin behave when pretending to be the sisters. Instead of being discreet like FBI agents would likely be when working undercover, they are constantly calling attention to themselves, whether it's yelling at people staying in the hotel or dancing at a nightclub. The whole point of their mission is because the FBI believes the sisters will be kidnapped, not that the mission matters. I even had to keep being reminded of it as most of the screen time is spent on sophomoric jokes and wacky shenanigans. I did mention at the start that there were a few scenes I did enjoy. There's a scene where the disguised Kevin and Marcus are in a car with the sisters' friends they meet. It's a simple gag of them not knowing the lyrics to the song 1,000 Miles, but it actually did make me laugh. It's a joke that has a decent setup, delivery, and even payoff when the radio switches to a rap song they are familiar with. Another scene I actually thought had some decent laughs is when Kevin gains access to a fancy mansion and pretends to be a famous athlete. The Wayans came up with some funny bits here as Kevin tries to explain things like a giant photograph of the real athlete in the living room and a vicious guard dog. Something else I appreciated was how the film handled the rich friends Marcus and Kevin run into when disguised as the socialites. When they're introduced, you think they might end up being snooty towards them for looking and acting completely different, as that's how these sorts of characters are often depicted. Instead, they're portrayed as being genuinely friendly and wanting to help the agents when they go clothes shopping and do other activities together. They don't even make fun of these two, despite some of the embarrassing events that occur. The way that entire friendship developed was actually quite refreshing. So I was not entirely stone-faced throughout White Chicks. Otherwise, I could not get past how unrealistic the disguises looked. The large majority of the jokes did not land for me, as they went for cheap, typical PG-13 humor, and most of the characters ranged from uninteresting to one-note to insufferable. However, as I said, the film does have a following. So let me know in the comments what you think of White Chicks, and thank you for the request, Andrew.